all for this side event that is being realized and co-organized by IDESAM and the Amazonas Sustainable Foundation. My name is Pedro Soares. I'm the manager of the Climate Change and REDD Plus program of IDESAM, the Institute for Conservation and Sustainable Development of the Amazon. I will be responsible for facilitating this event and that will explore the advances and perspectives for the implementation. So the event will be conducted in English, but we will count with some support for Portuguese to English translation when necessary. Gabi, coloca a minha, por favor. Present an overview about the REDD Plus context in Brazil. So it is a really short presentation about the role of Brazilian Amazon in the national REDD Plus agenda. So Brazil is still the global leader for REDD Plus. Based on this graphic represents the REDD Plus potential in the Brazilian Amazon. So based on historical deforestation data measured every year by the national system of forest monitoring, the PRODES, and also considering the national reference scenario, baseline scenario established by the Brazilian National Policy on Climate Change, and also on the national targets for reducing deforestation in the Amazon up to 2020. The target is to reduce by 80% the deforestation in the Amazon by 2020. We have how to calculate the REDD Plus potential in the Amazon between 2006 up to 2020. And the numbers shows that the Brazilian Amazon could generate more than 9 billion tons of CO2 of REDD Plus credits that would be avoided to be released to the atmosphere by 2020 if Brazil meets its own targets of reducing deforestation in the Amazon. So far, from 2006 up to 2015, the Amazon has already generated more than 5 billion tons of emission reductions of REDD Plus credits, what is probably the greatest contribution for climate change mitigation in the world so far. And out of this total, 3% were financed through the Amazon Fund that managed to leverage more than $1 billion in donations, mainly from the governments of Norway and Germany. And recently, the Amazon Fund and the Norway government communicated an additional $600 million for REDD Plus finance in Brazil. That represents an additional 2% of the REDD Plus already achieved in Brazil. So in the end of the day, Brazil managed to finance about 5%, about 6% of the REDD Plus already achieved in the Brazilian Amazon. And the REDD finance, it could represent a great opportunity for state governments to manage their current economic situation and also to invest in new technologies and local strategies for dealing with deforestation and forest degradation. And as you all might be aware, Brazil registered a negative GDP, or gross domestic product, in 2015 of minus 3.8%. And in the Amazon, the economic crisis was even more severe. Amazonas state, for example, faced a negative economic growth of minus 9% in 2015. In Rondônia, the economic retraction was of minus 5%, and in Amapá of minus 6%. So the challenge now is how to link the REDD Plus potential generated by the Amazon, which is the region that most contributed to climate change mitigation in Brazil, with this urgent need of economic development of the region. So moving forward and for discussing this issue, I would like to invite first André Guimarães, Executive Director of the Amazon Environmental Research Institute, IPAM, to present the advances of the REDD Plus discussions and results at the Brazilian Coalition on Climate Change, what is probably one of the most relevant and diverse networks in Brazil nowadays. So, André, please.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, IDESAM, Thank you, Faiz, for inviting me here today and for putting together this event. I think this is, it's not because my colleagues from IDESAM and Faiz are here today, but I think this is one of the most important events of this convention here. And I'm serious about that. We're talking here about channeling funds to protect forests, folks. REDD Plus is one mechanism. Everybody knows about it. It's a challenging mechanism. It's very sometimes controversial, but the fact of the matter is that we have to stop deforestation. We have to maintain forests intact, and maintaining forests costs money, right? And if maintaining forests costs money, we have to be creative in finding the ways to make the money reach the needs of the forests. REDD Plus is a potential mechanism. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Coalition Climate, Forest, and Agriculture in Brazil. The coalition, as Pedro mentioned, is actually a network of some 180, 190 organizations from private sector groups, private sector networks, NGOs, academia, individuals, experts, scientists, and so on. So we have a number of organizations and networks, as I said, that meets every other week. We talk a lot. We've set up some challenges for us to face. We have working groups that are dealing with specific aspects of the issues that connect the dots between amongst agriculture, forests, and climate. And one of these working groups, one of the challenges that the coalition has right now is precisely the REDD Plus challenge. It's a big debate in Brazil. As I said, controversial sometimes, but it has to be faced. It has to be discussed on an adult way to find the ways for us to channeling resources to protect the forest. A few weeks ago, the coalition has launched this document. It's translated in English, and it's somewhere for those interested. I strongly recommend that. That's with Christina back there. I strongly recommend that you take this, because I'm not taking this thing back home. So please help me not to carry overweight back to Brazil. This document is basically a joint effort of a number of organizations, amongst them ourselves, IPAM, IDESAM, FAS, and many other groups related, as I said, to the private sector. So we tried to lay out what is it that we expect from the government of Brazil when it comes to REDD. We expect a number of things. In a nutshell, the coalition would like the government of Brazil to start up the Brazilian domestic market for carbon, which is not operational today. It should be operational, so then we can have the opportunity to test the ground, to see the opportunities, to see how it can work, to see the challenges that it might face, and effectively have money being allocated to protect forests. So that's one of the expectations that we have. And it's important to say, folks, that within the discussion at the coalition, we've realized, we meaning environmentalists in debates with the private sector, we realized that we have to approximate these two groups, right? The solution for more efficient land use, because when it comes to REDD and protecting forests, this is framed within a broader agenda, which is the agenda of land use. Let me give you a few numbers from Brazil. Brazil's GDP is 40% dependent upon land use. Agribusiness sector is important. Managing the soils is crucial, not just for the current GDP of Brazil, but for the future of our country. At the same time, we are a mega diverse country with the Amazon, with the Atlantic forest, with the central savannas, with so many biomes, important biomes in terms of biodiversity, in terms of water. Brazil is home for about 16% of the fresh water in the world, available liquid fresh water in the world. So it's a big responsibility for a country like Brazil to find a way to balance or to match the land use for human needs, which is agriculture, ranching, and so on, with the protection of forests. It's a big challenge for Brazil, of course, but it's also a challenge for Africa. It's a challenge for Southeastern Asia. It's a challenge for so many countries in the world that have the responsibility to feed the world, which is the case of Brazil. Brazil is responsible for between 6 and 7% of the food of the world. We have 2% of the population, and we produce 7% of the food. And the way it's going in the coming 10 years, Brazil will be responsible for 10% of the food of the world. So there's a big responsibility over our shoulders to provide food to the world. But we can't do that at the expense of our forests, at the expense of our water resources, at the expense of our biodiversity. So finding the right balance between exploring well, efficiently the soils and our environmental assets and protecting them for the future generations, that's the big challenge we're facing now. REDD Plus is a mechanism that, as everybody knows, has the potential to channel in resources, and it's already working, as mentioned by Pedro. BNDES, Fundo Amazônia, and other efforts in Brazil are channeling today resources to stop deforestation, creating indicators, promoting the debate, investing in local communities, investing in Indian, Juliana Santiago is here, we'll tell you more about that. But anyways, the fact of the matter is that we are trying, we are learning, but there's a lot to do. And this lot to do, in our opinion, at the coalition, our vision is that the future of REDD Plus is to integrate REDD Plus with productive investments. So for instance, I have a farm. By the Brazilian law, in the Amazon, I can only deforest 20% of that farm to produce whatever I want, soybean, corn, whatever, cattle, right? Well, if I don't want to go that far, I want to only use 10% of my property, and I want to keep 10% of that property as set aside for conservation beyond what the law requires, what the forest code requires. I have no incentive to do that. REDD Plus can be an incentive to do that. But at the same time, I have another 10% of my property, which I have pasture land, for example, which has oftentimes low yields. So why not associate REDD Plus to protect forests with productive investments to increase the yields in that already cleared area? So the association of different monies for different purposes within one landscape, that's the future, in our opinion. And that's the reason why the coalition has been discussing seriously and deeply the issue of REDD Plus. And that's the reason why we urge the Brazilian government to sit down with us, discuss that in more depth, expand the horizons, and make sure that we can channel more resources to protect forests at the same time that we produce more. That's a new paradigm, right? The entire civilization, human civilization, and up until this point have worked with one paradigm. We have to remove nature in order to perform, in order to thrive. That paradigm has to change. The reason for this conference here is to discuss seriously how can we change that paradigm, because the climate is not holding anymore, can't hold it anymore. We're losing biodiversity. We're losing quality of life. We're increasing poverty. We are, creating divisions amongst our societies. Most of that due to little or more to environmental issues, water scarcity. Lots of the migration going into Europe today are related to water scarcity, which somehow is connected to climate change. So there are social, economic, political crises around the world. I'm not talking about Trump, so forget about it. So, but there are lots of economic crises around the world and political crises around the world that are somehow related to environmental issues. So we have to deal with that seriously. And we cannot deal with that on a confrontational way alone. Produce or conserve? No, not at all. How to produce and conserve at the same time, within the same landscape, more efficiently, with a better quality, with a better technology. Technology is available. I have another 1 minute, so I'll just give you a couple of numbers more about Brazil. Brazil has a herd of 180 million animals, cows, right? And we have about 220 million hectares of land, right? Of pasture land. So we have roughly a little less than one animal per hectare. I'm an agronomist by training. 25 years ago, I graduated in agronomy. And 25 years ago, we knew, and today we know even better, that we can have 3, 4, 5 animals, and that's not rocket science within 1 hectare of land. It's not rocket science. We can do that. Brazil can triple, quadruple its herd without chopping down a single tree. It's technologically possible. There is technology available. There are credit lines available. There is willingness from several sectors within the productive sector that are willing to do so. So why don't we do that? I'll leave that question to the debate. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Andre, for the inspiring speech. And it is of great importance to have the Brazilian coalition engage with REDD+ as a multi-stakeholder network in such a critical moment as this that we are going through in Brazil with an economic crisis and also a deforestation crisis in the Amazon. So just moving ahead with the agenda, I would like to invite now the General Director of the Amazonas Sustainable Foundation, Professor Virgílio Viana, to give his view on the challenges and opportunities for REDD+ implementation in Brazil. Please, Virgílio.
Well, thank you, Pedro. It's a pleasure to organize this event together with the IDESAM, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming. My presentation is going to be very specific on whether or not REDD is doable on the ground. And I'll just share some very practical information. The Amazonas Sustainable Foundation is the largest NGO of the Amazon, and we implement, in cooperation with the state government, the Bolsa Floresta program, which is a program that is implemented in an area of 11 million hectares, 574 communities. And this is the result of the Bolsa Floresta implementation. So in the first 5 years, and I'm just using the same baseline that the Amazon Fund uses, and I'd also like to thank the Amazon Fund for the help, because a significant part of our work is funded by the Amazon Fund. We had 28% reduction of deforestation in comparison with the previous 5 years. And in the second period, we have a 37% reduction in relation to the previous time period. So the short answer is yes, REDD+ works for forests. The second slide is, let me see, here, yeah, is whether or not REDD+ works for people. And here I'm making a big summary of lots of data, lots of information, just one slide. And that's all I'm going to present to you, these two slides. And this one is based on a survey, and the sampling size is in the bottom of this slide. So we had 77% of the families interviewed in the Negro Reserve, and likewise here. So it was very, very, very large sample size. This was an interview conducted by Action Research Institute, which is an independent polling institute of the Amazon. So I'll just call the attention for this data here, because it's a time series. So we did the same survey in 2011 and 2015. 57% of the people said that life has improved over this period in association with the Bolsa Floresta program. But then when we asked the same question 4 years later, that jumped to 83%. And if we look at the other reserves, which are in the beginning of the implementation, we have lower figures, because this is where only the cash component of the Bolsa Floresta is being implemented. So I don't want to go into the details, but the short summary is that REDD can work for the people in terms of improving livelihoods. Now, I'd like to make a connection with André's presentation. André made a very nice presentation indicating how the coalition of 130 plus 180 institutions think about REDD in Brazil. And our general view is that we have to move to a different strategy of REDD+ implementation, because although we have done a good job, as Pedro pointed out, Brazil has reduced significantly the emissions from deforestation, but funding is not yet at the scale that is necessary. And I think the panel that is going to follow this discussion, both with Ana Leixo and Ostrowski, are going to highlight the need of increasing funding. And here, I think that's where the challenge lies. We need to increase the value of forests as a strategic component of mitigation of climate change, and at the same time, for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, because you cannot separate mitigation from Sustainable Development Goals. We have to have poverty as a part of our strategy. We have to have gender education, and so on. All the 17 goals together. So in order for that to happen, there is a need to create new finance mechanisms. Juliana made a very nice presentation just a couple of hours ago on the strategy of the Amazon Fund, and it's been very successful. And Juliana will complement our presentation here. But this source of funding, Norwegian government, German government, is very limited for a very simple reason. There are not many Norways. And German is now pushed with the migration issue, with the conflicts of the Middle East and all this agenda. So how are we going to come up with the funding for this? And that's where I think we need to have a new vision. And that means to incorporate REDD as offsets for additional commitments that go beyond the existing Paris Agreement. The UNEP GAP report points out to something around 3 degrees. That's the business as usual towards which we are going, if countries do what they have pledged to do, which is not necessarily going to happen, because pledges of Paris Agreement are just pledges. That's not something which is going to happen necessarily. We may have some level of accomplishment, but possibly not 100%. But even if we do 100%, we're going to be still way above our targets. And how can we do that? One way of doing that is to unlock private finance. And how can we do that? We should have that as a way of incorporating REDD+. Now that we know that it works, it's not to say that there are not issues to be dealt with. Of course, we have to make sure that there's benefit sharing that is fair and equitable. There is transparency, that conflicts are dealt with in an appropriate way. I mean, all these things have to be taken care of. But the point is that we have to unlock new finance. And I think this COP is one that we could make a step forward in all agreeing that forests are very important, that reduction of deforestation is essential, it's doable, it can be good for people, and that we have to be coherent. All of us, probably 100%, maybe 99% of all those here in this room and in the COP, we came through airways. So we flew to come here. So we have a footprint. Have we all paid for this? Have we all offset our emissions? And the answer is that only a small fraction has done so. And that's not coherent. That's not consistent. Although we should aim for a solar fueled jet, that's not available today. And it may become available 5 years down the road, 20 years, I don't know when this is going to happen. But until then, we're going to be producing greenhouse gas emissions. What is the best way of offsetting those emissions? There's nothing better than forests. There's nothing better. CCS, carbon capture and storage, is extremely expensive and has zero co-benefits. Forests have a number of co-benefits, not only carbon. We are talking about poverty, we're talking about biodiversity, and also rainfall maintenance. There's excellent science on the role of forests in rainfall circulation processes. So I think our call from our experience in Brazil is that we have to be very aggressive in terms of innovating the financing mechanisms so that we increase the level of funding to implement action on the ground. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to discuss these issues, and I'm looking forward to the debate. And in closing, I'd like to invite you all to visit our website. As you can see, we have a lot of work, but we didn't have time to show the work here, but it's all available in our website. And you can also talk to some of our members here, and including people like Mario Mantovani, who is a very active member of our board, and several of our staff members who are here too. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Virgilio. It's always so good to listen your inspiring views about sustainable development in the Amazon. So let's just move ahead with the agenda. I would like to invite now the panelists to take your seats on the table for our panel. So I'd like to invite Juliana Santiago, Head of Department of the Amazon Fund. Thank you, Juliana. Also, the Secretary of Environment of the Amazonas State, Tonne Strosky. Secretário, por favor, dirigir a mesa. Also, Ana Aleixo, Director President of the Institute of Environmental Protection of Amazonas State, IPAAM. Ana, por favor. And Professor Virgilio Viana, the General Director of Amazonas Sustainable Foundation. So the dynamic here, we will start with initial questions that I will direct to our panelists, followed by an open Q&A session with the audience. So I have, Juliana, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I have one question. The Amazon Fund is successful REDD Plus program in Brazil. With a total budget of more than $1 billion that came from contracts with the Norway and the Germany governments. However, the increase in deforestation in the last years of 24% comparing 2015 with 2014, it demonstrates that we still need to go further in terms of REDD finance in Brazil. So my questions to you are, what are the long-term vision of the Amazon Fund regarding REDD Plus finance in Brazil? And how can the Amazon states engage in the process of fundraising for REDD Plus?
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, IDESAM, for the invitation. Thank you, Faz, as well. And thank you for the audience to be here. So as you know, as you might know, Amazon Fund was created in 2008 as a pioneer initiative in REDD Plus. During the previous COPs, Brazil presented a proposal of a mechanism to raise resources for rewarding the results achieved in reduced deforestation and constantly the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions to nature. So the Amazon Fund was really pioneer at that time, and Norway was the first donor, followed by the German government, and then the Petrobras, which is the oil and gas company. So today, really, we have $1 billion already internalized to the fund, plus an additional commitment from Norway and from the Germany government, respectively about $600 million up to 2020 from Norway, and more 100 million euros from the Germany government. So we have now 85 projects already supported by the Amazon Fund, and other specific number of projects being analyzed. That comes to almost 80% of the funds already committed, not including the new pledge made last year. So, but is the Amazon Fund the only or the main instrument to support projects in preventing or combating deforestation? Of course not. We have a national strategic policy that tends to address or to through the diagnosis of the main drivers of deforestation that actually change from time to time, and to establish some strategies, actions, and measures to reduce deforestation. So you were right when you said that we have an increase in last year of deforestation, and actually this has been a worry to all of us, because deforestation, as we saw, we had a significant reduction in the past years of almost 80%, but now we arrived in a stabilization rate. So what should we do differently to the actions we've taken in the past? Because it seems that we reached a a significant point. So now the Brazil has established its commitments, its NDCs to the next years, and has also created the national strategy for REDD. So this strategy includes chambers, technical chambers to discuss things like issues and themes like safeguards and the funding and distribution of resources in REDD, and also involves in this process the consultation and participation, not only from the federal government representatives, but also from the states of the Amazonian region, and also from the civil society that acts in pro of REDD. So the results of these chambers probably we reach in the next years. But this is a working group that will set in the implementation of the national REDD policies. And the Amazon Fund is fully integrated to this national policy. So our strategy is to contribute even further in promoting and avoiding deforestation, in addition to the national policies and in addition to the national actions of doing that. And Brazil, in the past, has significant results in reducing deforestation. But the expansion of that is now the challenge. And as Virgilio said, we really believe that we have to consider in the sustainable development the inclusion of the people that lives in the forest, and to think about an alternative, a sustainable production alternative, to have them being strategic in helping implementing actions and projects to not only have their income as generated, but also act as monitoring instruments, monitoring actors in the forest. So this, I believe, is very important as well. One of the main focus of the Amazon Fund is not only to support traditional communities. So Virgilio has presented some results of the Bolsa Floresta project that aims to support traditional communities that lives in the protected areas that were declared by the government to be protected based on its richness of forest, native forest, and richness in terms of biodiversity. But there are people living there. We don't have only trees and rivers. We have a lot of traditional communities that live there. So these communities has to learn best practices in managing their territory and in generating more income from their traditional ways of living. For example, with the production of Brazilian nuts, or the acai that some of you might know, or the rubber. So each community and each region has their own traditions. Indigenous people is also a very significant group of people that the Amazon Fund supports. So we have so far of that 85% of projects already committed, 21 is to deliver and to support indigenous communities. And that in terms of area corresponds to 55% of all indigenous territories already demarcated in Brazil. It's about the size of 40% or more of the Morocco area. So it's a significant area. So these are other focus. But we cannot forget the structuring projects. How we will change in a structuring and in a scale the reality and develop the region in a sustainable way. So that we also support a lot of projects that are linked to the national strategy of monitoring the territory and stimulating the correct and sustainable use of the land. So, for example, in the past years, Brazil has launched the Forest Code. And based on that code, it was established that every single property owner had to declare their property to a national system, the national system control. And this declaration includes the georeference the area, identifying all the native forests, all the productive areas, and after that to declare their intentions if it was necessary to recover the degraded areas that were not authorized by law. So as André said earlier, for example, in the Amazon, 80% of each individual rural property has to be protected. This percentage is less than what the law requires. The owner of the land has to recover the degraded area. So we in this process, the Amazon Fund is supporting the enrollment of small producers, small owners to this national system that we call the National Registry System, CAR, C-A-R, the acronym. And this is one of the projects. And to finalize in terms of structuring projects, we've been supporting the improvement of our national monitoring systems, satellite monitoring systems. Not only improving the quality of the images, it can be before the system identified areas of deforestation of 25 hectares, for example, and now with the improvement, we can identify areas of even 1 hectare. So it's a significant improvement. Another project, we support the implementation of orbital radar monitoring that can see throughout the clouds, because in the specific times of the year, the Amazon is covered by clouds. So the illegal loggers, they know the weakness of the system. So we support the improvements so that the command and control institutions will know where the deforestation is happening and will act accordingly. So these are some of the examples we've been doing. I think when we look to the Amazon Fund itself and the projects we support, we do have important results in reducing deforestation. Sometimes we clearly see the results, and sometimes it's indirect. But I think to even go further, it's a national strategy of putting together and thinking together of new strategies to go and to reach our NDCs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. Yeah, as we said, the Amazon Fund is the most advanced initiative for REDD+ in Brazil, for REDD+ finance in Brazil. And we need to consolidate this more collaborative environment for making REDD+ work on the ground and integrating states as key stakeholders for REDD+ finance and for fundraising for REDD. And just linking with my next question to the two representatives of the Amazonas state. So the State Secretary of Environment of Amazonas, Mr. Antônio Strosky, and Ana Leixo, Director President of the Institute of Environmental Protection of Amazonas State. Secretary and Ana, the Amazonas State was pioneer in creating a climate change regulation in 2007. Recently, in 2015, the state approved a state law for environmental service that creates a positive environment to implement REDD+ on a statewide scale. But my question is, what is the plan of the state of Amazonas to finance REDD+? And how can it support the state of Amazonas to promote sustainable economic growth? Se precisa que eu... Foi traduzido?
Não, sim, traduzido.
Eu traduzo.
Okay.
Bom, secretário, I will just...
Presentation.
There's translation. Okay.
He will speak in Portuguese, and if you want to follow it in English, please put your headphones on.
And secretary, if you want to came here, please.
And I believe there are headphones in the entrance for those of you who have not collected.
Boa tarde a todos. Agradecer ao IDESAM e à organização pela oportunidade. Nós vamos falar sobre os avanços e as perspectivas do ponto de vista de REDD+, o estado do Amazonas. A viabilidade, a implementação do REDD conta necessariamente com uma agenda estratégica que nós elencamos aqui com 12 itens. O primeiro, e de destacada importância para todos nós, é a gestão das unidades de conservação, que o Estado tem 42 unidades, em sua grande maioria já com plano de gestão. O tema também das mudanças climáticas, para o qual especificamente temos uma lei, as ações de combate ao desmatamento, das queimadas, da degradação, incêndios florestais, a regularização ambiental dos imóveis rurais, que é a abreviatura, o CAR, instituído pelo Código Florestal brasileiro, o zoneamento ecológico e econômico, que é fundamental. O Estado ainda está atrasado com este estudo, com essa avaliação, com este zoneamento. Nós temos uma região pronta e 2 regiões correspondentes à bacia hidrográfica do Rio Madeira e a região do Baixo Amazonas em andamento. As cidades do estado do Amazonas também precisam fazer a adequada gestão dos resíduos sólidos e, para tanto, também o Estado tem tratado da definição de uma política estadual de resíduos, em que pese uma regulamentação nacional da Política Nacional de Resíduos Sólidos. Os recursos hídricos, indiscutivelmente, são estratégicos para o Estado. A maior bacia hidrográfica do planeta tem no território do Amazonas a sua maior parcela de representação. E temos um conselho gestor em plena atividade, definindo já os regulamentos complementares para a outorga e para também a Lei de Serviços Ambientais relativa aos recursos hídricos. Serviços ambientais, uma lei específica recente do ano de 2015, em processo de regulamentação, e com ela nós anunciamos que o Estado já está apto a ter o aporte de recursos aos fundos instituídos por esta lei, tanto de recursos públicos como privados. A educação ambiental é um tema transversal em todas as agendas estratégicas do Estado, para o qual nós temos também termo de cooperação com o governo federal. O fortalecimento da gestão ambiental nos municípios da Amazônia é um grande desafio, e no Amazonas não é diferente. Os órgãos ambientais municipais têm ficado à margem das ações do controle ambiental que efetivamente acontece dentro do território desses municípios. Os povos e comunidades tradicionais compõem aquele conjunto de pessoas para os quais o Estado tem que ter um olhar especial, e, com isso, nós também temos, na secretaria que eu represento, um conselho que trata dos temas relativos a esses povos e comunidades tradicionais. E é importantíssimo que nós tenhamos, no curto prazo, já a definição de uma política florestal. O potencial madeireiro do Estado é inegável, mas ele precisa se dar nos moldes dos planos de manejo florestal sustentáveis. E, para tanto, nós fizemos a revisão de uma lei de concessão de florestas públicas, que antes tinha limitações de área, e ela passa a ter uma perspectiva de um potencial que alcança até 53 milhões de hectares de florestas estaduais. O Amazonas possui áreas não destinadas, de florestas não destinadas, e nestas áreas é onde reside muita preocupação com relação à degradação florestal, à grilagem de terra, ao desmatamento ilegal. E é indiscutivelmente necessário tratar também da vulnerabilidade e adaptação às mudanças climáticas. Esses efeitos nós já estamos vivendo no estado do Amazonas, com uma alteração dos níveis dos rios no período das cheias, atípicos do que historicamente nós registrávamos, como também vazantes em níveis também atípicos daquilo que se observou durante os anos desde que foram feitos os registros. E os eventos têm acontecido numa escala de tempo muito próxima, de anos consecutivos. O que a gente quer destacar para todos os senhores é a Lei de Serviços Ambientais. E ela possui pressupostos, primeiro, o econômico, que leva em conta o desenvolvimento econômico ecológico baseado nos serviços e produtos ambientais que nós temos e no potencial produtivo do interior do Estado. No aspecto social, a valorização do modo de vida tradicional, através de um sistema seguro de repartição de benefícios que alcance os povos e comunidades tradicionais que falamos, associado às salvaguardas socioambientais. E institucionais, nós temos um ambiente favorável para o desenvolvimento de parcerias, para a cooperação, compensação, e um sistema estadual de meio ambiente que orienta as decisões estratégicas do governo do Estado, um sistema em que tem um meio colegiado para discussão, avaliação e orientação. E ambientais, o esforço histórico, de redução histórica do desmatamento e incremento de áreas protegidas, que cresceu consideravelmente nos últimos 8, 10 anos. Bom, o objetivo da lei é garantir a manutenção da integridade, então, dos nossos ecossistemas, né, associada à qualidade de vida da população do estado do Amazonas, gerar novas oportunidades, valorizando esses atores e as atividades responsáveis pela conservação dos serviços ambientais. Tem como princípios, então, a integridade ambiental, os benefícios sociais, a segurança jurídica, sustentabilidade econômica. Estamos avaliando também a inclusão de todas as áreas territoriais e a redução efetiva e duradoura do desmatamento. A Lei de Serviços Ambientais estabelece programas da conservação e valorização. A lei também tem as questões relativas aos recursos hídricos, as nossas unidades de conservação, REDD+, o conhecimento tradicional dos povos e comunidades, e aqui com destaque as atividades não madeireiras, atividades extrativistas, uso, conservação e uso racional do solo, a beleza cênica e turismo, e aqui um potencial, inclusive, com o turismo de base comunitária. Este é o cenário, então, do estado do Amazonas, um território acima de 56% de áreas protegidas, um total de 266 unidades. Apenas a área em branco que são as áreas não protegidas. Só terras indígenas do Amazonas possui 42,2 milhões de hectares, ou seja, 27% do seu território. A governança, ela se dá através do controle social, e aqui a gente destaca os conselhos estaduais de meio ambiente, de povos e comunidades tradicionais, de recursos hídricos, um fórum de mudanças climáticas e o Conselho Nacional de REDD, onde nós também participamos, efetivamente. Aqui uma ilustração dos estudos recentes de vulnerabilidade do clima, assinalando as regiões do estado do Amazonas, onde nós teremos os efeitos mais imediatos de elevação de temperatura. A meta do desmatamento dos 350 quilômetros quadrados para o ano de 2020, e esta é a preocupação. Esta curva está com tendência de crescimento nos últimos 3 anos. Como a gente pode observar aqui, a partir de 2015. Esse número aqui é inferior a 712 quilômetros quadrados, mas há uma expectativa que 2016 também nós tenhamos este número acima do que era esperado, do que desejávamos. Uma relação, apenas para ilustrar, que o desafio para o estado do Amazonas se concentra nos municípios que estão no sul do estado, nas fronteiras com os estados de Rondônia e Mato Grosso. Aqui uma ilustração também do desmatamento, o desafio que se coloca para o Amazonas está nesta região. Ainda há que se registrar que quase 40% do desmatamento, particularmente no estado, se dá em áreas de assentamento feita pelo governo federal. A preocupação com o modo tradicional de preparo do solo, nós tivemos esse número de registro de queimada nos últimos 3 anos, e as queimadas ocorrem nos meses de julho a outubro, notadamente, é o período do preparo do solo tradicional para atividade agrícola no estado. E essa aqui é uma ilustração, é o que eu tinha a apresentar aos senhores. Muito obrigado, meu tempo acabou.
Ana, feel free if you want to add. Se quiser contribuir algo, fique à vontade. Vamos lá. A gente está com o tempo um pouco apertado, então, se for preciso, em 5 minutinhos, por favor, fique à vontade.
Boa tarde a todos. Minha palestra? Não é? Não vai. Enquanto a Gabi coloca ali a palestra, eu gostaria de agradecer ao IDESAM e à FAS pela oportunidade, de estar presente aqui e mostrar o que é o nosso trabalho e como ele é desafiante. O Amazonas é deste tamanho, tem 1,5 milhão de quilômetros quadrados. Só para comparar com o nosso anfitrião, é 3,5 vezes o tamanho do Marrocos. Então, o IPAAM, que é o Instituto de Proteção Ambiental, o órgão que eu presido, compõe o sistema ambiental coordenado pela Secretaria do Meio Ambiente, tem como atividade fim proteger esse estado aí, esse tamanho desse território, não só na parte florestal, mas das questões hídricas também. Enfim, toda a parte ambiental é competência nossa fazer esse trabalho. Concordo com o André, talvez seja esse momento o mais importante, porque é a oportunidade que nós temos lá da Amazônia, do Amazonas especificamente, de colocar quais as nossas dificuldades num fórum tão apropriado. O Strotsky falou um pouco de tudo isso, mas, ressaltando os números, 97% da floresta preservada do Amazonas, segundo os dados do INPE. Tem um pouquinho menos, porque o índice está crescendo, A recessão que o Brasil passa não é novidade para o mundo inteiro, e o Amazonas sofre porque a sua base econômica toda é centralizada em Manaus. É um estado que tem 3 milhões e poucos mil habitantes, mas só Manaus tem 2 milhões de habitantes. Então, Manaus é uma cidade-estado, é um polo muito grande de desenvolvimento. O desafio de todos os governos ao longo desses últimos 14 anos é interiorizar esse desenvolvimento. Como fazê-lo? A economia do Estado é centrada, basicamente, em produtos manufaturados, eletroeletrônico, que numa crise como essa foi o primeiro lugar em que a economia encolheu. Mas também nós, que fizemos o dever de casa, somos um dos poucos estados brasileiros que mantém a sua economia não devemos nada, o funcionalismo público está em dia, as contas do Estado elas estão saneadas. Então, nós fizemos o dever de casa. O que é importante para nós nesse momento? Que o Brasil trace uma política clara de REDD+, que seja inclusiva e que não exclua de financiamento, seja lá, os estados subnacionais, especificamente o Amazonas. O desafio nosso é muito grande e a gente, para não tirar recursos do Tesouro do Estado para investir em questões de políticas públicas diferenciadas, como a questão da ambiental, que é transversal, que passa por todas elas, pela saúde, pela educação, pela segurança pública, nós precisamos do apoio da comunidade internacional para fazermos isso com mais tranquilidade, com mais folga, porque fazermos, nós já fazemos, e fazemos dentro daquilo que temos capacidade para fazer. Qual é o papel do IPAAN dentro de tudo isso? Resumidamente, nós temos a obrigação do controle e monitoramento de toda a atividade ambiental no estado do Amazonas, toda aquela que gera, todo o licenciamento ambiental, toda a parte de proteção de floresta, de recursos hídricos. A Lei de Serviços Ambientais é um instrumento importantíssimo, porque nos dá marcos legais definidos para que nós possamos fazer uma atuação mais eficiente. O Estado hoje trabalha, como um todo, numa mudança da nossa matriz econômica, e talvez esse seja o maior ganho que nós teremos daqui para frente. Por quê? Porque visa levar de forma sustentável para todo o interior do Estado um programa de desenvolvimento pautado na sustentabilidade. Então, para que isso aconteça, nós precisamos do apoio, sim, do BNDES, que é um órgão brasileiro, mas de todos os fundos que nós possamos conquistar, já que o Brasil, na maior parte das suas metas, coloca para alcançar os índices em 2020, a Amazônia é o ponto focal disso. Então, o Amazonas ele é o estado, não é mais importante, mas é aquele que preserva com maior intensidade toda a sua cobertura vegetal, ou seja, presta maior serviços ambientais para o resto do planeta. Bom, temos aqui alguns resultados da atividade que a gente faz, o tempo é muito pequeno, mas é importante que isso fique registrado. A apresentação fica aí, quem tiver interesse. Eu não estou passando aqui. Ok. Obrigado. Esses são todos os dados. Nós temos no IPAAN um sistema de georreferenciado, todos os dados são georreferenciados, todo o licenciamento. Isso aqui são todos os empreendimentos licenciados no estado do Amazonas. E aqui todos os focos de desmatamento e calor que a gente consegue acompanhar. Aqui é o trabalho nosso de fiscalização. Como é que é feito o planejamento de nossas ações, como é que se dá. É tudo georreferenciado, ela vai levando em consideração e mostra a atividade de campo, como nós fazemos. Era o que eu tinha que dizer. Obrigado. Acho que eu só passei um pouquinho.
Obrigado, Ana. Thank you, Ana and Secretary Strosky. Sorry for the short time that we have here. I have one really a last question for Professor Virgilio Viana before we open for our Q&A section. So, Professor Virgilio, the Amazonas Sustainable Foundation manages the Bolsa Floresta program. That is the largest initiative of payment of environmental services in the Amazon, probably in Brazil. So the Bolsa Floresta benefits more than 9,000 local families that live within state-protected areas of the state of Amazonas, and generate several social and economic benefits for those families. But the Bolsa Floresta, as well as other local initiatives in the Amazon, is also facing challenges for making the initiative work under a REDD Plus perspective. So what are the main challenges and opportunities for financing REDD Plus in the Amazon and in the Amazonas state?
Well, there are many challenges. One challenge is to keep it going. We don't have secured funding in the long run. The strategy of the Bolsa Floresta program was based on a vision that in 2009 we would have a carbon market for REDD. And then Copenhagen didn't come through, and that didn't happen. So fortunately came the Amazon Fund, which is now one of the main funding sources for the program. And the second is philanthropy. And the third is a small proportion of the carbon market. So tomorrow on Saturday, we're going to be launching a very important platform with the BV Rio, Bolsa Floresta, or Bolsa Verde do Rio, which is an effort together with the state of Amazonas and several other states. If I'm not mistaken, Ms. Trotsky, there will be together with Amazonas in the BV Rio, 5 states, or 4 other states, so it'll be 5 altogether. And this will be a registry of carbon offsets so that they will be set aside the carbon credits that generated through the various initiatives. I think that's probably, Pedro, to be very quick in the response, I think that's probably the most promising way of doing it in the way that I see. I should also add that the Green Climate Fund is becoming operational. We've been dialoguing with the Climate Fund, and I think that can be an interesting source of new finance. The problem that I see with international agencies is that they're very bureaucratic and very slow. And Andrea worked for the bank, World Bank, and I'm here, I don't want to single out any institution, just make a general comment. All of them are extremely bureaucratic, very high transaction costs, and too slow. So I think we have to push for more innovative, more efficient, more or mechanisms with lower transaction costs, so that we can have finance flow. It's funny because whenever we come to meetings like the COP, people say, "Oh, money is not a problem. There's plenty of money." And then there's a paradox, because then you go to the other side of the equation, which is the field, and then people there like Anna saying, "Well, we need more funding to do the stuff that a monitoring agency like IPAN." So it's missing. So we need to have more efficiency in terms of disbursing the money. But then you have the question of what is the institution mechanism which is efficient to deliver those results. And I think that's an issue that Juliana also has mentioned in another occasion, the challenge of improving the efficiency of governmental organizations in implementing these activities. So I think this is how I see the challenge of funding, both capturing more funds and also to increase the efficiency of use of existing funds. And my experience, having been a state secretary for 5 years, I was in the position of Ostrowski for many years, and now being in a non-profit foundation, is that we have to look for new institutional designs. I think governments in general, and here run the risk of making a general comment, but I think it's valid for most situations. Governments tend to be slow, bureaucratic, and with low efficiencies. So given the fact that we're in a time of a crisis, an environmental crisis, a huge environmental crisis, we cannot afford those inefficiencies. And I think one of the issues ahead of us is how to think outside of the box. And that's why I like very much the comments made by Juliana, that we need to think of innovative ways of scaling up what is already being done.
Thank you very much, Virgilio. And thank you very much to all the panelists. I would just ask you to please remain in your seats, as we will now take a couple questions from the audience. We still have, we will have like 10 minutes for questions and answers. And let's have a round of 3 questions. And then if we have time, we take another round of 3 questions. So you could please raise your hands. I have Rosa, sir here, and Chimene is here. So Rosa first, Gabi, please. Please just say your name, institution, and to whom you want to ask your question.
Thank you. Rosa Maria Vidal from the Governor's Climate and Forest Fund. A question for the panelists and also the organizers of this event. You have mentioned several times, and there is a coalition already put it in place, to ask national government to open their vision or opportunities for mobilizing additional funding. What is the status of that conversation? Is a dialogue happening? Is the new REDD is a strategy going to help in moving forward that dialogue? And what is the real, possibility that is going to come to an agreement? I think it's very important because we have heard these positions not coming together for a long time, and I think it's very important to start putting a deadline in terms of if these positions are not going to be becoming an agreement, what is next, or how we can really facilitate a much better integration of subnational and national processing in Brazil.
Thank you, Rosa.
Okay, my name is Dr. Moses Zama. I'm the National Coordinator for the Nigerian REDD Plus program. When Juliana was making her submission, she did acknowledge the fact that drivers of deforestation flick as we move on, they change. I did hear you say, yes, there are drivers of deforestation you identify, and they do change as we move on. I just want you to share with us if there are any experiences for why or elements you've been able to track why these drivers of deforestation change as you've been engaged in the REDD Plus project. What are the issues? What are those things that you've been able to identify for the reason you will share with us why these drivers of deforestation change, and what efforts are you putting to be able to track these changes as they present themselves?
And my name is Kwame from the National REDD Plus Secretariat of Ghana. In Virgilio's presentation, he indicated that through REDD Plus, there's been enhancement of livelihood for the Bolsa Floresta program. But in the earlier presentation, we heard that Amazonia had the lowest growth rate of -9% in the whole of Brazil last year. So I just want to reconcile those two issues, whether REDD Plus is indeed leading to enhancement of economic productivity or is causing a decline in economic productivity in Brazil. And then my other issue has to do with a direct question maybe to Juliana. How much does it cost to reduce 1 ton of carbon dioxide? I think we need that figure to help us maybe in the quest for funding for this wonderful program that you're implementing. Thank you.
How much
Okay. So I can start trying to answer Rosa's question about the Brazilian coalition. And among the Brazilian coalition, the dialogue is moving forward. The Brazilian coalition is a huge network with more than 100 institutions from private sectors, NGOs, and individuals. So just to have this common ground for discussing REDD Plus among the network is already an advance, important advance. And this network has a lot of, it has a good dialogue with the federal government, and we are trying to improve our REDD Plus understandings among the civil society and the federal governments. We know that it's not an easy task, and it will not be a fast, we will not see such fast results, but we will keep our work as civil society to make REDD Plus working and opening new finance strategies in Brazil. And we know that it will be a tough work, but we are willing to move ahead. Juliana, please.
So I try to go through all those questions. How much it costs to reduce 1 ton of carbon? Actually, the Amazon Fund has a methodology to capture donations, valuing the carbon dioxide per ton times $5 per ton. So this is considered conservative from some people, and it's I would say one of the most conservative measures. We do not monitor, to the projects we support, we do not monitor how much carbon dioxide it avoided, because that would be so cost consuming that we focus more on deforestation rates, income generation, depending on the project and the axis that we are focusing, because the national policy has 3 main axes: monitoring and control actions, sustainable production activities actions, and land use and territory plan. So like the conservation units and the indigenous landmarks. So these are the 3 focus with the action plans for each one. So we look to the results and the targets and the indicators that are established when we negotiate in the project in the beginning, and we verify and we monitor the implementation throughout the period to verify the accomplishment and the results up to the end and during the implementation. You said about REDD Plus versus economic productivity. Actually, Brazil in the past years has increased its productivity, agriculture productivity, and cattle as well. But we still have a significant space to improve in terms of efficiency, in terms of intensify the production, to use less land and produce more. So that there are, as you know, scientific techniques to improve the production. But we could see when we had that decrease in deforestation, we also had an increase in agricultural production. So this is something that we thought in the beginning that was one against the other. So it's possible to develop and conserve forests. Another question, what are the main drivers? What are the diagnoses that we faced in the past years? Recently, we received and we had a study about from the National Space Agency of what were the main regions that has higher deforestation rates and what are the characteristics of those regions. So one thing that was identified is that the settlements had a higher percentage of deforestation between the other properties. Settlements in the past, the federal government stimulated the occupation of the Amazon and then established the rural and the settlements of people that did not have lands. So they gave the title but there is a logic of giving title to lower income people. It's regulated, but the deforestation there, we've been seeing that is increasing significantly. So this might be one of the focus in the next years, how to deal with the settlements and stimulate the sustainable production from them. Another significant percentage that was we verified was deforestation in private properties. So the forest code is there with the intention to regulate the use of the land and to punish through the monitoring the usage of the land that is not allowed by the law. But we've seen that the private owners are passing through it by the law and deforesting. So one thing that's being considered is how to punish and be more effective in monitoring private lands deforestation. So this is just some examples, but we can see, for example, the indigenous territories are still a good block to deforestation pressure, and conservation units as well are a significant block of deforestation pressure. I don't know if someone else wants to discuss about the dialogue with other countries, but just to fastly respond, the Brazilian Development Bank is in the process of accrediting with the Green Climate Fund. So we expect this will be one of the main funding for REDD in the next years.
Thank you, Juliana. Secretary Strauss, do you want to add something on this matter?
Eu quero, na verdade, resgatar uma contribuição do representante da Nigéria, que mencionou na intervenção da Juliana que os promotores do desmatamento mudam com o tempo. Eu vou acrescentar dizendo que eles são nômades, eles mudam de território. Nós estamos sentindo isso no sul do estado do Amazonas. Os grandes polígonos de desmatamento que aconteceram em Rondônia e Mato Grosso estão acontecendo no sul do Amazonas pelos mesmos indivíduos agentes que estavam nos estados vizinhos. Essa é uma questão. E a outra importante, que a Rosa falou, é que é preciso colocar prazo. E é exatamente esse o contexto. Nós temos um ativo a preservar, a gente diz para as pessoas que não é para desmatar, é para conservar, para preservar aquela área, mas o desafio nosso ele se dá necessariamente pelo econômico. Então, há que se ter um prazo para que nós, a ANA em especial, os governos que estão no poder executivo, possa levar políticas públicas e recursos para as pessoas para fazer frente ao desmatamento, porque senão as pessoas vão ficar vulneráveis. Ele vai cortar a árvore, ele vai caçar animais que não pode fazer isso, vai grilar terras porque vai atrás da mineração ilegal, porque eles precisam viver, as pessoas precisam de dinheiro, a economia precisa girar.
Thank you, Secretary. Virgilio, we have a question for you, right?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of just helping, well, Rosa is gone, right?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll skip that. In terms of leakage, as Ostrowski said, is not only leakage. In our case, is a moving frontier. Because as forests are exhausted in one part of the country, people just keep on moving. So it's slightly different from leakage in the concept of REDD. And the strategy for this, I think it's to increase the value of forests. Basically, I think that's the main challenge that we have, to make forests worth more standing than cut. And both through forest products coming from managed forests, as well as services, environmental services, such as carbon, biodiversity, and so on. And also supporting sustainable land use of forests. And supporting also deforestation-free land uses. André made the point in his intervention about the cattle farming done in a way that it's sustainable. So it's increased productivity and reduce that pressure for more land by increasing the productivity on a per area basis. And there was a question about the decrease of the Brazilian economy together with improvement of livelihoods, how that conflict is being dealt with. Well, in the case of Amazonas, the reduction that Ana made a reference to is very much associated with the industry. Manaus is an industrialized city, which has a very strong component of the economy. So in our case, was that the main driver of economic crisis. And that poses a risk because governments are tempted to encourage business as usual activities, such as expansion of agricultural frontiers. So it's a time of critical decisions to be made. And finally, an issue of the cost of carbon. That's a very interesting research question. There are different methodologies of estimating that. We have done an estimate in our side. It runs between $2 to $7 per ton. It depends on the assumption and on a number of parameters, but this is an issue that has a strong methodological aspect to it, depending on the assumptions one makes, the time horizon, what is included and what's not included, then that can vary to a great extent. But I would say it is in the order from 2 to 7 in the cases of where we work. And again, let me also make a point that the Amazon is extremely heterogeneous. So we cannot talk about the Amazon as if it was a single area. It's huge, as was pointed out in the maps of Anna and Strosky here. So the cost of REDD in one part of the country is different from the other part of the country. And even within the state of Amazonas, there are very different realities.
Thank you, Virgilio. And I would like to invite you for a really fast closing remark, Virgilio, if you would like to, a closing remark of this really productive event. We have less than 2 minutes, so it just thanks.
No, I think we had a very nice debate. I think it was interesting to see how the debate flew. You made a point that the Amazon Fund captured less than 10%, yeah, about 6%. And this is great that it happened. You know, have 1.2 billion. It's the largest fund. It's the one that it's most effective, I think, internationally in terms of disbursing. But we need to, as Juliana pointed out, to look for new innovative mechanisms and ways of scaling this up. And here, I think there's a window of opportunity, Juliana, to explore how BNDES can get into a market-based solution. Of course, you're dependent on a political decision of REDD, but I think doing explorative studies could be a way of contributing to this debate. And I think BNDES, as a huge development bank that has a portfolio of tens of billions of dollars per year, it's around what? It's around 70 billion reais per year.
Per year of disbursement?
Yeah.
Yes, more sometimes. Yes, today it's about that 70 billion US dollars per year.
So it's about 20 something billion dollars per year. So it's a huge bank. Yes. So it would be great to explore the roles that the bank can have in developing a market. And I think this needs well with the points that both Anna and Strosky made. There's a huge demand for funding. And the question is how to increase this funding. I think I was talking here on the side with Juliana, how to increase the funding to states and how to increase the efficiency of the use of these funds. I think this is a big challenge that we have ahead of us. But I think the call that André made from civil society, there is a sort of a general consensus among civil society members that we have to explore these innovative finance mechanisms. And I think we have to create a demand for offsets within Brazil, and so that we can jump into the next phase of the implementation of the Paris Agreement with experience on how to do implementation of market-based mechanisms. And I think that's
okay. Thank you very much, Virgilio, and thank you very much for you all for coming. One last invitation from the Amazon Fund. Tomorrow there will be an event about the Amazon Fund and REDD Plus initiatives and experience on the ground at 3 p.m. 3 p.m. and 20 minutes at the Brazil Space Pavilion 4. You are all invited to go. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Agora isso é você tem discutido isso? Eu penso, mas é uma coisa em etapas. Em etapas. Eu acho que é uma coisa em etapas.
pegar essas apresentações. I'm just gonna get the presentations. Oh, okay, sure. Let me help. Você consegue esperar? Claro. Prometo que vai ser rápido. Obrigada. It's going to be in Westfield? When? Okay. I just want to get the whole presentation.